Yes.
on
Drew,
record.
we made it.
First of all, thank you for your patience, tolerance, and grace with how shitty of an adult I am.
No way. No way.
Right?
No
But
way.
it's also probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me is becoming an adult.
Say
So
more. Say more.
I'm just an awful adult.
Somehow I don't believe you, but I mean, why do you say that? Why do you?
I don't know, man. I just there's days of the week that end in Y that I just would like to not have any responsibilities again and just
Mhm.
do whatever,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
play, hang out, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. Uh, it's funny, and there's a lot to get to because we probably haven't seen each other since 2019.
Hmm.
Is that right?
It's about right.
Buddy,
A
that's a
long
long
time. And
time.
before then, it was probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It was probably much worse before that. And so, number one, that's a shame. Um,
Agreed.
but of course, you and I were in hair metal bands
Hmm.
way back when.
Back when I had hair.
Back, so, listen, I could still get it going back here if I wanted, you know?
Oh, I was
Uh,
doing that for a hot minute there, dude.
yes, yes, it might be time to go back. But listen, I want to talk about it all. So with
Cool.
you, tell me how you, because this is all about talking about music, man. And since nobody else will talk to me about music, I just reach out to people and say, please, please, I'm begging you, talk to me about music because I love it. And I love being around it. Man, tell me, how did you start?
How did I start? Well, I didn't grow up in a house that was like surrounded in music all the time or anything like that. Um, so it wasn't like a thing that was like ingrained in me. Um, my my uncle, my mother's brother, he lived in Kansas for most of the my life that I knew him, and he was a huge musician. He was like a master musician, composer, session dude. He played like every string instrument, every brass instrument, everything. He had a room. I went to his house, I think maybe twice in my life. And there was it's funny because like in this room, every wall is black. The trim's black, the door's black, the ceiling's black. If I don't have lights on in here, I can't really tell where the wall is. And that's kind of by design. But in his house, he had a room that was all white, had a white couch, a white baby grand, a white acoustic, all white everything. I still have the white acoustic. My mom still has the white piano. But um, when I was maybe 11 or 12, my brother and
Was
I
your
were.
uncle was your uncle Luther Vandross?
Yes,
Okay.
actually. You can tell there's a
Yeah.
resemblance. It's
Right.
mostly in the cheekbones.
Right.
Uh, no, it was my Uncle Reed. He passed away in 1998 or like right at the end of 1997. I was in seventh grade and my brother and I were playing sports and just kind of hanging out. I had switched schools a bunch when I was young, uh, like every year to 2 years, I was switching schools and shit. So come seventh grade, I'm like skateboarding, baggy pants, airwalks, Journeys stickers. I was talking to my cousin Jay yesterday about Journeys stickers. It was so funny. Uh, but I got hurt playing soccer and I found that it's a 1981 white Fender Gemini acoustic guitar. And it has a white leather strap with the gold and red inlay.
I love your uncle, man. I love
Dude, it's
this.
fucking sick, right? I'll go get it in a little bit and I'll
Yeah.
show you. But so I'm hurt and I pick up this guitar. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, man. And the first thing I did was write a song. And I think I barred everything on like the fifth fret and just fifth, sixth, seventh just went up. And I was probably like, I don't fucking care. I don't fucking care. And there was just something in that moment that was like, wait, I just made something that didn't exist before. And it made me feel like I was saying what I was feeling in my body. And I hadn't ever felt the ability to express myself in that way before. I was always creative, always, was always in art class and, you know, big drawer over here. You know what I mean? Love to color,
Hmm.
uh, that kind of shit. And that like that day, that was it, man. Uh, I was done playing sports. I was done trying to fit in and be cool. I was done everything. It was from that point forward, I just started writing music. And I got as good as I could on my own to like know what a chord was and know what they were called and which was which. I did take a couple of guitar lessons. Super fucking hilarious story. We don't have enough time, by the way. We're gonna have to do like a 2 or 3 part.
I'm totally in.
So my first guitar teacher, his name was John Plauché. It's this blues guitar player from Baton Rouge. His brother was like buddies with my dad in high school. And so when I was like, hey, no, like it's legit, I'm like really interested in this. Like, oh, well, let's just send him to fucking Jimmy's brother over there at Ziegler Music on Florida Boulevard. And this motherfucker, is it okay if I curse? Would you like me
This
to
is
keep it?
this is a YouTube show, buddy. So
Okay, cool. I'm gonna just be me. Um, my guitar lessons were Sunday mornings at like 10 a.m. This dude had not been to sleep, not once, right? And he just had this way about he just didn't give a fuck about shit, man. He's like, yeah, first thing I'm gonna teach you, what songs do you know? I was like, well, I wrote this. He's like, no, play me a song that you know. I was like, oh, the only songs I know are the ones that I've written, you know. He's like, okay, well, you're gonna learn how to learn other people's music. I was like, this sucks. And the first song I learned was um fucking what's the name? There was a house in New House of the
oh
Rising
yeah, House
Sun.
of the Rising Sun.
Yeah, House of the Rising Sun. Big blues dude, and I'm
Hmm.
over here like jamming frog stomp. I'm like, no, dude, just down tune that shit and you just hold it with one finger and scream
you
about your
don't need
dad. You
you
know what
don't
I
need all
mean?
those
Like,
fingers. Too many
yeah, dude.
fingers.
You need one finger. It's like bass players, right?
Right.
Um and he just was so funny. He you got to do it like this, you dig? And I would just say, yeah, man, like with a shovel, I guess. I don't know. And that didn't last very long. Uh, I think he tried to recruit my mom to go sing in his band. My mom's a great singer, and we always had a piano in the house, but she would never play or sing much. Um, and I never fucked around with it. Like, still, I'm 41 years old, and I don't know how to play the piano. But I think that's like my new bucket list items.
Dude, I can't say enough about it. I started a couple years ago. Just
Really?
changed. It's changed everything. It has changed
No
everything.
shit. Is it
I
like super cool and fun to write on
I
too?
that's all I want to do now. I rather do that than play guitar. It is so much fun. You got to do it. Anyways, back to the story.
I think that's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna do a piano record. Um, so then I said, fuck that dude. I'm just doing my own thing. Kept writing. Found a couple of kids at school that had a guitar in their closet too, or some shit like that. Seventh grade, eighth grade is like lots of Silverchair, um, lots of Nirvana, that kind of shit. And I started taking guitar lessons from this guy named Jimmy Granier. And he was local guitar dude. He was probably like mid 20s. He lived like 3 blocks from our house. I grew up really close to like LSU campus, like in College Town area. So I'd ride my bike over his house. I'm in like eighth grade. Ride my bike over to his house Tuesday and Thursdays after school. Uh, he'd give me a beer. Um, Probably totally doxing this dude. Uh, and then he'd like people like, what do you want to do? Like, well, I like this chick and she likes Marcy Playground. Can you teach me that fucking Marcy Playground song real quick? And he's like, yeah, I know how to play that shit. I had to learn it for a cover gig last week. You know what I mean? And so he'd teach me how to play it
Yeah.
real quick and it, 15, 20 minutes and be like, now what? I was like, well, I wrote this song. He's like, play it for me. He's like, you're just using standard chords. You could use like cooler phrasings of chords. I was like, I don't know what that means. He's like, just find the same notes somewhere else on the neck and make it sound cool. And that was a game changer for me. And then from then on, dude, that was all I did. I started. I was in the Battle of the Bands in eighth grade. One of my most embarrassing moments that I still think about to this day is it was just my quote unquote band and this other band, and I was buddies with most of these guys. One of the guys in the other band, very prominent dude in the music scene down here, very successful songwriter, this guy Benji Davis, you may have heard of.
Yeah.
Uh, so me and Benji Davis's bands battled each other in the eighth grade Battle of the Bands at St. Aloysius. And all the dudes in his band were very popular guys. All the guys in my band were just like, we were just, hey, you got drums at your house? We didn't really know each other. It was just, do you like fill this role?
Yeah.
And I was good buddies with one of the dudes, guy Chris Spinoza, and he lived close to me as well. So all this was like, man, we did this. We grew up on bikes, just with the fucking backpack, soft strap, with shitty like Squire tellies and shit, dude. Just going all over the place and plugging into something and making noise. And the most embarrassing thing that about that was it was sound check and their drummer wasn't there. And like, hey, can you check the drums? I was like, sure. I don't know how to fucking play drums. So they start playing a song and dude, I was just hitting random shit. And they just all turned around and like looked at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? I think about that probably once a week still.
You didn't ask if I played,
Yeah.
you know?
I said I'd hit drums, I guess.
That's
You know
right.
what? That comment you just made is probably going to make me like now I have like thoroughly processed that trauma and I'm good now. They didn't ask me if I could play. They
That's
just
right.
asked me if I'd hit them, right?
That's right.
There you go. Fuck yeah. That's
Yeah.
what this was all about. We're good. We're done.
Closure, baby.
Closure.
It's time.
So yeah, then high school happens, which was not great for me. I went to Catholic high school in Baton Rouge, all boys, had to wear a uniform, couldn't have facial hair, had to cut your hair above your eyebrows. And if not, then, you know, they'd give you scissors or a one blade razor. And I was asked to leave that high school 6 days in. They don't expel people at that high school because that looks bad on them and they would lose their like blue ribbon, whatever the fuck. And I get my whatever you want to call it, whether it's like stubbornness or just fuck the man attitude from my mom. They called my mom in that day and they're like, we think he should leave. And my mom's like, nope, that was it. I stayed, I had detention every day until I graduated high school after my sixth day of high school.
So, so Drew, was it a like a social thing or an academic thing? Like what was
Mm,
the feedback? Like,
I was very against authority
yeah.
at a young age, and I went from like public schools where like it was fine to be creative and draw and shit like that to private schools, and the just the culture is total 180, and I couldn't catch up. So I was definitely the weird, quiet, angsty kid that just did weird shit, made weird music, until like my junior year of high school, the Battle of the Bands. I had this three piece. I had met these kids again, bikes in neighborhoods, right? Met these dudes that were like skateboarding and smoking cigarettes in my neighborhood, and I was like, those dudes are fucking cool as shit. And didn't really know them at all. Again, didn't know these dudes. Somehow I think what had happened was I saw a guy, I was riding my bike and I saw a dude from school that I knew hanging out with them. And then over the course of 3 months of me like working up the courage to be like, hey, who were those dudes? He told me, oh, that's these guys. It's Michael Russo and Steve Bergeron.
Yeah.
They just hang out under that like bridge and smoke cigarettes in that neighborhood. I'm like, damn, that's cool. So it was like over the summer of my freshman year of high school, I got to know those dudes. I lived down the street, you know, and we started this band. I brought the guy, I brought the drummer who wasn't there, who I sound checked for in the eighth grade Battle of the Bands, who's Benji Davis's cousin, Matt Harriman, to play drums. And then we started a little three-piece pop punk rock band, me and Matt Harriman and Michael Russo. And Steve Bergeron would come in and play with us every once in a while, whenever the fuck he'd feel like it.
Mhm.
Right. That dude was born with the VH1 behind the music. Like we could just get that
Yeah.
out of the way right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the dude who you really want to talk to. But, um, and man, we were just having a good time. The bass player, Michael Russo, his parents lived one street over and maybe like 5 or 6 blocks down from my parents' house. And they had this little kind of mother-in-law thing at the end of their driveway. And we just turned it into the most disgusting shithole. There was just gear, cheap gear, like any used couch we could find on the side of the road before it would rot away, cigarette butts everywhere. You know, it was just a wild time. But, you know, I met all these guys from all these other schools and shit. There's maybe 8, 9, 10 of us, you know, kind of in and out. Everybody kind of played a different instrument on weekends. It would just be a long jam session, dude. I would play, we'd just like jam Miles Davis riffs and stuff, you know, for no fucking reason, for hours. And then write shitty pop punk rock songs for some reason. But it was this camaraderie that I'd never known before. It was like this safety of friendship and like this group that I'd never known before. And I was kind of bouncing from school to school to school. And so I latched on to that, dude. And I gave it everything. I gave it all of me. It was this is where my energy goes. Fuck school, fuck teachers, fuck parents, fuck everything else. This is everything. And just started writing music and playing shows anywhere and everywhere. Any fucking living room, the YMCA, dude. We were like legends at the YMCA. We'd pack that bitch with like 300 kids from 4 different high schools on a Saturday night, you know, with like one microphone, one shitty like PV speaker, you know what I mean? Some fucking like just scanned like weird design handbill flyers that we would go and put on every car of every high school parking lot in town. And then just go play music and get gross and sweaty and try to convince some college kid to buy us beer at the gas station afterwards. And we were having the absolute fucking time of our lives, you know? And then Battle of the Bands happens at Catholic High my junior year. And I was like, I'm going to submit a demo tape. So we made a demo tape, submitted that shit. And then I just passed the demo tape. I just gave it. Anybody who wanted it here, right? And then kids were like playing songs from the demo tape in art class to like, hey, I made a painting based on this song or something like that. And I was like, that's fucking dope. And they let us into the Battle of the Bands my junior year. And in my junior year at Catholic High, there were a couple of bands in the senior year that were really good musicians, terrible artists. I think there's a big fucking line between a musician and an artist.
Hmm.
And it can get very both ways, but there are some people that are one or the other.
Yeah.
And there was like one band that sounded a lot like Dave Matthews, and then another band was like this like super funky jam band, and then there was us, and I was just writing. We were writing songs about like Samuel L. Jackson, and we went bowling that weekend. Like there's literally a song called SLJ, and the beginning of it is just me screaming 181 because that was the score I got in bowling that day. You know what I mean? We do time of my fucking life.
Yeah, yeah.
I could still play that riff too. I mean, maybe for like 10 seconds, but
So was this under the band's name, or did you have a different name you were
no,
going?
no. This band was called Soul House.
Soul House.
Worst band name of all time. But really, that was when I learned about the band name conversation, which is the worst conversation on earth. Because you got three motherfucking dudes like Josh Barbier and Steve Bergeron and Brett Shake Snyder or Michael Russo and Matt Harriman. And I know the dudes in your band who probably are this motherfucker. When you're like, hey, what are we going to call this? They're like, I got it. Dick Parade. You know what I mean? Or something like, man,
Wait a minute, is that taken?
yeah. Oh, it is. Um, so Soul House, yeah, little three-piece pop punk rock band. Uh, and we played that battle of the bands, and these guys that were seniors, they were really good. And I guess what we had done doing all those YMCA shows and all that shit mattered because we had no idea, but when we got on stage, like everybody was there and screaming and jumping up and down and singing, so screaming 181, 181. You know what I mean? And then those other dudes got up and they were really good, but no one watched them and no one gave a fuck, you
Yeah.
know? And we won. And then that's when people started to like come up to me and be like, "Hey, I was at Battle of Bands. Your band's really good, dude." I'm like, "Thanks." This is the same kid that like beat me up because I didn't have Nike tennis shoes 2 years before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, cool, I guess. Fuck you still, you know? And then, and it felt good. So I just chased that, man. Senior year is kind of a blur. Got really into drugs and drinking by that time and had a, first like super toxic romantic relationship with like girlfriend cheating on me and shit like that. And what I realized was really, really good at writing songs after being hurt really bad.
Mm.
And and I had all this shit to say, and we wrote this record, and I just got it actually. My friend Clay Ashe, who I could talk hours about. He has a show he does called Ziggy and the Junkyard Band, or Ziggy's Art something. He's an alien that found the discs that we sent out, the Challenger discs, and fell in love with Chuck Berry and boards the ship back that his planet sends just with information, like hijacks it and lands in this junkyard with this band. And there's like every member of the band represents a different era of rock and roll history. Dude, you got to fucking talk to this guy. Trust me. It's like on PBS now. He's brilliant. Anyways, he went to Catholic High. He's a year older than me, but he knew Michael Russo before I knew Michael Russo. So we became buddy. He was one of those like 8 dudes in that group of super close motherfuckers. And I got that record from him. He's like the vault, I guess, but I got it from him maybe 6 months ago and listened to it for the first time in probably 30 years. Uh, but that record, we never finished it. Um, the band broke up, and I was just going through it. Like there's a pattern you'll find in my life, like very, very blatant pattern of good shit riding a wave and then just critical mass failure, right? And that was one of those moments. And it wasn't, I think, self-destructive in that time like it would get to later on in my life, but I just kind of had enough of like that. Hey, we're going to call ourselves Dick Parade and just make songs that where we're yelling 181, like I'm about to start college. I'm taking this shit seriously now. We're packing out, these little shitty all ages venues and doing this shit. We're in the middle of recording this thing, and those dudes were just not taking anything serious. The night that I quit the band, I was having an argument with Michael Russo in the like parking space of the house that we all lived in. the condo shit by campus. Everybody had been drinking and shit. And I just get smoked in the face from nowhere with this giant black dildo. And Matt Harriman, Benji Davis's cousin, the drummer who I most embarrassing moment until first talking to you tonight of my life, was on like 20 yards away, just
Yeah.
laughing his ass off. And I was like, that's it. I'm out. I'm
Done.
done.
That's all it takes for the
That's
record.
all. That's all it takes. Yeah, man. So I was done. And I, out of like spite, what happens is like I have those seasons or those chapters, whatever you want to call them. And I get to that like bottom and I'm like, I'm gonna crawl myself out of this. I can only do it by myself. Fuck everybody else or whatever it is. Like some switch hits, and like the next day, I had a conversation with someone. I was like, I'm gonna start a new band. Um, I don't want to know the dudes before starting the band. I don't want it to be any friends, and I'm gonna write music that's different than anything that I've written, and different than anybody in this town's heard. And fuck those dudes. I'm gonna do it. And then like, 3 months later, I'm like in a practice space above the catery with Josh Barbier and Brett Shakespeare and like telling them what the vision is.
What
You know,
year? What year is this?
this would have been 2002.
Hmm.
Yeah, 2002. So I graduated high school in 2002 in May, started college at LSU, met those dudes, started writing. And then by like 2003, we were playing 2, 3, 4 song sets, like opening for buddies and cover bands and shit like that. Anything that we could get. We came out to Lafayette and recorded a little 4 song demo. It was all so quick, you know. Um, but we were all kind of moving with intention. Josh and Brett had known each other their whole lives, um, which is really fantastic for a rhythm section.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And I know but if anybody's ever like truly watched Josh Barbier and Brett Shakespeare play, those are the stupidest motherfuckers on earth and the most brilliant motherfuckers at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just it's fantastic to watch. It was super motivating to me. To you know, I know lots of really great drummers and really great bass players. What I'm talking about is just something different. Maybe it's chemistry or whatever, but being in a room with those dudes just kind of jamming for the first time was like, okay, this feels so different.
Mm.
Um, and I could see how I could build on top of that, you know. I just started writing shit. Um, you know, relationship stuff seemed to always be kind of going on in my life, you know, whatever was happening with shit at home, whatever was happening with shit at school, that's such like a defining moment of anyone's life, like that time of like 18 to 24, you know, like where you're becoming an adult and you have this opportunity to like build this foundation for the next chapter of adulthood. I just didn't do that. Uh, the traditional path, I guess, but the the goal was always just to write music till the day I die, and those dudes were in. And that's what we started doing. I'm trying to think if I've skipped anything. I've talked a bunch.
I love it. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. So that's when we started Meriwether. Um, just the three of us. We had a rehearsal space. Josh and I were both working at the catery at the time. I kind of when I quit Soul House, um, I put this like mental barrier between me and those two guys, right? But it ended up putting that wall up between me and that whole group of guys.
Mm.
And in retrospect, I think maybe when I say like things were happening so quickly, it was like something inside of me needed to replace that very quickly because it was a support system, you know? And so I did that. I made new friends, lots of musicians. I was dating a musician at the time. Um, she was a singer in a cover band from Lafayette. They had some originals too. So I'd hang out with them. And all the guys in her band were older, but they were fantastic musicians. They were called Janka Joe. Um, and they had an original band called Stella by Starlight. They did a record with. It was fantastic. And they were all like classically trained in whatever field of instruments from UL here in Lafayette. Fantastic fucking musicians. And I start writing this stuff for Meriwether. You know, this is kind of during that transition before starting it, and I'm showing it to them, and they're like, "You can't do that. You can't go from those two chords to that chord and then back to this chord. It's not in the, I don't know, mixolydian scale of
I see.
harmony."
Yeah.
Fuck it. I don't know, dude. I don't know any of that shit. But I was like, okay, well, I think it sounds cool, so I'm gonna do it, you know? Um, and they had this guitar player in their band that did a lot of like the booking, and I would talk to him before the shows, after the shows, and he was brilliant. He could tell you like what's the best day to play this venue in this city in 3 years from now, just based off of past data that he's collected, you know? And he could put tours together, he could put this together, and we were playing. Meriwether had started, we started booking some shows, and we would open for them a couple of times. You know, that was kind of like a helpful, helpful relationship to be in there because they were a pretty big name in that scene. And you know, when at 9 o'clock, 9:30 at the catering on a Thursday night, there's four people there. No one gives a fuck if we get on stage and play three or four songs real quick. It was just practice in front of people to see how the songs felt, you know, and it was fun. And people started showing up more. Anyways, we double booked ourselves. Josh booked a gig and I booked a gig. And somebody was calling from some bar and was pissed off that we weren't there or something like that. And I was like standing next to the guitar player of that band, and he was like, "Do you need help just booking? Do you just need help doing that kind of shit?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And he's like, "Cool. I want to take this much percent of whatever, gentleman's agreement. I like what you're doing. Let's get rolling." That was Burt Landry.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I had this, I kind of, I had this very quickly rebuilt support system out of probably fear, spite, whatever you want to call it. And I was very motivated and very, eager to see what I could do next. And that ball just I think that one of my superpowers is just creating momentum. Um, and that was a ton of momentum. And when I would bring a lot of the things that I enjoyed about the time I had in Soul House, like making flyers and going to Kinko's and printing 400 pieces of yellow paper, black and white, and then cutting them ourselves and going and putting them all over the place. That I was like, hey, Brett, Josh, we're gonna do this too. Um, and we'd have fun with it, man. We'd put on like old Beastie Boys, like the punk rock shit Beastie Boys, and like ski masks and go ride around LSU campus and put a flyer in every single Revelry newspaper at 2:30 a.m. before the next day. We'd chalk all over the quad, Meriwether at the Catery tonight on like a Wednesday, dude. You know, like we were out there 3:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, like after a Tuesday night of working at the catery all fucking night. We didn't have anything else to do. You know, we worked in the nights at the bar. Um, we wrote music during the day and, you know, hammered after the bar. Um, you know, I remember Josh Barbier would go to like the sorority houses on like sorority row and just knock on the fucking door and be like, "Hey, I'm Josh. My band's playing. You should come." And like, dude, they
And
a
it
couple
was
of them would show up,
pretty
dude.
compelling, right? It's pretty
Yeah, yeah.
compelling.
I mean, that's all that dude ever had to do. It's
That's
unreal.
right. That's right.
But yeah, man, people started showing up. Um, you know, so I had this new support system, this new group of folks around me. Uh, I had a couple of people who were like champions of the cause, you know, and for, you know, the next 3 years, that's what we did. We worked at the bar, we partied at the bar, we played at the bar, we wrote above the bar, we lived down the street from the bar,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay, man. So
Yeah.
Meriwether has started. You guys
Yeah.
are in the catery, doing your thing.
Hmm.
And this is probably where we meet at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah. That's,
trying to think where that would have been. I think
I know exactly where it was. It
Lafayette.
was, it was at Renaissance in Lafayette.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
give me your recollection because I'm trying to go back.
Okay, I'm going to do my best, okay? Because I don't know if you could see a pattern in what I was mentioning before there, but we worked at the bar, we played at the bar, we lived down the street from the bar, we had a rehearsal space above the bar. The bar was a very big part of that, you know, and there's just like Star Wars, dude, there's got to be a balance, right? There's both good and bad with all of that. But yeah, we started playing more shows outside of, you know, opening for buddies cover bands and shit like that. um at the time the cover band scene was kind of huge in Baton Rouge, at least, so finding places to play was always a challenge for like original music,
Yeah.
unless you would play somewhere like the Catery on a Tuesday, you know what I mean? And then
Mhm.
you're just inherently going to get less of a built-in crowd. So we got creative, played as you know, anywhere we could, but we also had Bert in our corner, and Bert had been playing that circuit professionally for years at this point, all the way from Houston to Florida.
Mm.
So he'd get in touch with all of the buddies at like, you know, all these, you know, like the big mega bars in Panama City and shit like that. You know what I mean? And be like, "Hey, where should my guys play?" And they'd be like, "Oh, we've got a battle of the bands coming up. Then get them over there." What Meriwether's first show was the Battle of the Bands and at the Swamp in Panama, actually. Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, that was our very first show.
Yeah.
Uh, it was great. What a experience that was. It's and also like I hardly knew Brett and Josh, so I'm traveling with them to Panama for our first show, and getting to know them along the way. And the way that we got to know each other was just, we jumped right in, man. We just partied and hung out and just, you know, off the rip. But yeah, no, we started playing in other places because of that. And a lot of the guys in Burst Band were from Lafayette and Renaissance downtown. Judd was like the guy in Lafayette that was booking original shit at this one place downtown. And you would walk into that bar, little shotgun bar. Stage was on the left. It was this weird ass, like, had 7 different sides to it in a weird angle.
Yeah.
Awful setup.
Yeah.
Therefore, could not have possible sound worth a fuck. But we didn't give a shit back then, right? And then a bar along the left side, bathrooms on the far right. That was it, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember we had played there a couple of times, and there were a couple of Lafayette bands that were starting to do original rock stuff around that time too that we would become buddies with. You know, there was Oh Juliet, Brocious, um, lots of those guys that were kind of doing that thing. I think one maybe Brocious was on that bill that night too. But anyways, I saw you guys come in, and I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, you guys, some of you guys had like the sleeves on your shirts cut off, or like the collars cut out,
Yeah.
and like this stuff. And I think you were still wearing glasses at that point. And I was like, who the fuck are these dudes? And then you played and you opened your mouth, and I was like, as many places that I thought that we were playing, I was like, I have no idea what else is out there, do I? And that was like hearing you guys and hearing bands like that come into town and play. I was like, dude, I have to go where they're at. I want to go see what's up there, you
Yeah.
know? I want to go feel that too. But yeah, man, that was the first night Meriwether and Tyler Reed ever played together. Was the Renaissance in Lafayette.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Man,
good.
I know. And when you think about like music is so different now. Um, and not to take too big of a diversion, but
Please do.
the joy, the joy in those moments of like you're in a different town and you're playing with these other bands and you look up on the stage and you're just like, what is that?
Mhm.
What are they doing? And then
Yeah,
you
man.
get to know them, and then it's like this family that you sort of become, right? This brotherhood of um and you, I know you've got dozens and dozens of these guys in different towns where you just look back and go, what a special thing that was. And I get it today. It's like, hey, let's just make it all online and just do it online. But man,
Yeah.
it's hard to trade at least what we had in that moment of
Oh, absolutely.
new
I
music.
the discovery, well, to me, it's like there was this endless fountain of inspiration and we all took it for granted. You know what I mean? At least I know I did. And I know that that fountain of inspiration does not exist because it's impossible for us to physically be in the same space and coexist like we were.
Yeah,
And that had so
absolutely.
much to do with it. And that is that whatever you want to call it, the chemistry, the magic, the ether, whatever. There's some people that you meet and there's that magic there. But I also feel like is my volume doing weird shit?
No, you okay?
Okay. I also kind of think that music is like the closest thing to actual magic that exists.
Mm,
Um, because you have these wizards and warlocks, right? Casting spells with their hands that are creating invisible rays of things that each individual person within range that is physically capable of will consume, and it affects their nervous system and their brain in a way that can give them an emotion completely unique to themselves and completely different that than the emotion that the person next to them can have
yep,
from that same invisible wave. That's
absolutely.
magic.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fucking magic.
Hmm.
And when you are surrounded by people whose magic inspires your magic and it makes your magic better, and in so doing it makes their magic better, and you're just there for that, you know, that's the most beautiful time in my life. And it was that run with you guys, Old Juliet, Tragedy, like Punch People from fucking New Orleans. That like was we started playing with them when I was in Soul House, and then started playing with them with Meriwether. One of just the most inspiring, fantastic groups of creatives. Like every one of these groups that we were with. It's also a Louisiana thing, dude. There's so
Mm,
much goddamn talent in Louisiana, and I am whatever biased. I don't give a shit. But I mean, I've played everywhere. You've played everywhere. I know musicians from all over the place, and I also know that the best musicians I know are all from Louisiana. There's a
oh, for sure.
handful, right, that are great,
Yeah,
but there's just something in the fucking water down here, dude,
I agree.
that is like you're born with grit and determination and this kind of like sense of fuck off that you don't get much other places. And I'm very disconnected from the music scene these days, so I have no idea. if the kids that are doing it now have that. But I know that we did, and you guys did, and that's that brotherhood, man. That was you just can't like mold that. You can't create that intentionally. You know, that happens like so organically. For
Yeah.
it to have meaning, it has to happen organically. Otherwise, that kind of shit gets forced, you know. I'm sure you guys have done it too. You'd be on tour with a band and they're nice dudes. You're nice dudes. It's just something doesn't click.
Hmm.
Play fine. They play fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Sure.
but it's just not the same as, you know, the fucking tragedy, Meriwether, Tyler Reed tours, you know?
Yeah.
Even like little 4 day like
Oh,
up
I know. I know.
wherever the fuck.
The
But
best.
man,
I'd give you I got to give you this because you guys for so many reasons, but you made us such a better band. And there's lots of reasons behind that. I remember the story of being in the catery one time and we were going to open up for you guys. The Coast Catery shows were awesome.
yeah.
But we weren't like you guys had you had the very unique ability to go in an all ages place and totally fit in and totally belong. And then you could go and play like a college bar and you would totally fit in and totally belong. We had to really learn the other side, I guess you'd say,
Mhm.
of like more general audience, because that just didn't come natural to us. But I remember being in the catery one time and we were working on Michael Jackson. So we had like like the groove and everything and the chorus. And I was just like, this chorus just isn't good enough. And, Meriwether's choruses are so damn good. And like, we just have to make this better. Like these guys are like just killing it. And so that's just one of many, many examples of things that you taught us. Like I would look at you guys and go, man, the way they handle this crowd, the way, it's just the different approach, right? It's different than
Yeah.
all ages, but you guys swung back and forth like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And like even tragedy to a degree couldn't quite do that, right? Because they certainly had that pocket their thing.
Mhm.
But if you put them in a really young all ages crowd, it wasn't, it just that wasn't like native to them
Yeah.
from where they came from. So, but you guys had this amazing ability to slide back and forth.
It's really interesting. I've thought of something similar to that before, but less about kind of age group demographics and more of like musical style demographics where, and I know that you guys did the same thing, but you go on tour with, I guess the most polarizing example I could give is like going on tour with Papa Roach. That set list has to be different than the set list on tour with Seosin.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that we were able to do that. We could do, I mean, yeah, there's certain songs, I wouldn't play Girl in Mexico at a fucking Papa Roach show. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Or I
Yeah.
wouldn't play Machine Gun Baby at a Papa Roach show. Um, they just, I mean, yeah, some people would dig it, but there's also like, uh, it's a, it's a very difficult thing to wrap my brain around. Where it's like, it's a job, right? And if the goal is growth and scale, then what do you have to do while maintaining your core values and not letting other people turn you into something that you don't want to be just for growth or scale, right?
Right. Right.
And so that became the fight very early on for me. And it became a very similar fight of who's taking this seriously and who's not, because I'm capable of creating momentum and getting us to this place where if you all show the fuck up, like we can take this next step. But you have to show up and do your part, and you have to show up and do your part, and you have to show up and do your part. And that's always tough when you have to, put your trust and rely on other people.
Mm.
And if or when they do or do not pull through, what do you do in those moments? But with the all ages stuff, I the reason I think we were good with that shit is because of Soul House. Because I started in the all ages scene in Baton Rouge with that
Yep.
band. I knew
Yep.
exactly what where to promote, what's high schools to flyer, what high schools not to flyer, which ones where the cop would try to chase me off, you know. Um, so I just kind of felt a little more connected to that. Like that what like I'm looking out and playing to those kids. I didn't have when I was their age a band putting on high quality shows, bringing in other talent from other cities and things like that to for me to experience when I was in high school. And here's me just giving them this opportunity to experience that because it's feeding my soul too, and like sharing what I find with people who care about it
Yeah.
is inspires me too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's why probably is that Soul House grind because dude, it was people will talk about the work ethic of Meriwether and people will talk about Meriwether are assholes and people will talk about some of those are the greatest guys I know. Whatever it is, we did everything 100%,
Mm.
for
Yeah.
better or worse. But a lot of that came from the Soul House
Yeah.
days for me. And that's what I'm saying. When I brought all that stuff in to Josh and Brett, they were like, "Fuck yeah, we'll go put flyers up and chalk the quad and do this and do that." And you know what I mean? What else do you want to do? And then they'd have ideas too. Oh, what if Josh would be like, I'm just going to go to the sororities because I have a reason now to go knock on the door. I'm like, yeah, dude, do you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Brett's like late. Like, what? Brett was late one day for practice. This is like 2 weeks into meeting Brett. Like, hey man, you're 2 hours late. I have work in 30 minutes at the fucking catering. And I had a song that I've been dying to jam on with you guys. And he go, oh man, I'm sorry. Uh, I didn't have any money. So I shot a squirrel in the parking lot and with my BB gun, and I found a couple quarters under my couch, and I went to a Piggly Wiggly and got a bell pepper and an onion, and it just took longer. I'm like, what?
Oh,
And mind you,
incredible.
like when you first meet Brett Shake Snyder, it sounds like he's speaking in a foreign like language, which
Right.
is just
Correct.
heavy, heavy
Yeah.
drunken Cajun, you know?
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember the drummer from Sayus and the last night of the first tour we did with them, he was like, man, I'm kind of bummed I didn't get to know you guys better. And I'm like, yeah, me too, man. I do this often. I wait till the very end of a tour to put effort in, and that's just anxiety, you know? We cut ourselves some slack here, but he's like, I think your drummer hates me though. Like, what?
I can say he doesn't. And I don't even know this
And I was
story,
like, dude, I
but I know he
promise you.
doesn't. Yes.
He's like, yeah, like he just walks up to me and just says stuff in this language. I'm like, he's from this place called Donaldsonville.
Right. Right.
He's probably just asking you where the bathroom is, man. Yeah, I promise you,
Oh, I love that guy, man. I love
dude.
him.
He's one of the best human beings on this earth,
Oh,
for sure.
but so you made me think about something when we talked about your ability to slide back and forth. And I'll throw it out this way. Let me see how you try this on. You mentioned the combo of the bass and drums. I think that part of your ability to go down so well with that bar crowd, where sometimes they're just like, look, you know what they're trying to do. They're at a bar. They want to drink. They just want to hang
Yeah.
out. They're not there to like be touched by music. Right. But I think and it's amazing you did it without covers, like amazing. I think that part of that appeal, obviously your songwriting and vocals are always at the front of the band. But in Louisiana, you kind of got to make people dance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's always that, that they said about Southern rappers, or, you got to make people in the South dance. And I
Yeah.
wonder, do you think that there's something there that's what helped you guys with those crowds, or what do you think?
I think so. I also think that we were hammered 99.9% of the time ourselves. Right. So we're part of the crowd at that point. Like we just want to dance too, dude. So this bridge is now 17 minutes long.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You
Yeah.
know, it's my stage. You-
I can
You're
hear
gonna,
it. It's like doom, doom, doom,
yeah,
doom, doom, doom.
exactly, dude.
Yeah.
And I think that we were just having a great time up there, and people like when I've always said that like when the vibe is authentic, the crowd will will mirror that back, you know? Um, I've played with bands who had a big hit and had hardly ever played live before and just hadn't honed in those chops. And then we're opening up for them. We've done 200 shows that year so far. You know, we're first of four and they're the headliner. And we're fucking crushing them every night and teaching them all the tricks that we know and showing them this and that and the other. You know what I mean? It's like that just repetition. You know, we were playing, whether we were rehearsing, writing, or playing live every day for years, you
Yeah.
know. And you mentioned something earlier, you know, with everything like digital these days. Dude, I'm very not on social media much, hardly by design, due to my own personal defects. But there have been times in the past where I would see things from local artists or regional artists, and they would complain about the city that they're in and how nobody in this city cares about this, that, and the other. And these are the same people that make a Facebook event for their gig. And then, you know, back in the day, you had to use like weird code snippets to like copy and paste it into the fucking MySpace URL or whatever to like auto select all friends. So you didn't have to manually do this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have to do that part, right? But if that's all you're doing, you don't get to fucking complain
Yeah.
about what everybody else is doing. And I have this work ethic that's ruthless that I got from my mom. That's both a blessing and a curse. You know, I worked
Mm.
myself into just the dirt with Meriwether. By the end
Yeah.
of Meriwether, dude, we were just, it was so many shows and just like the initial ramp was this steady growth, you know what I mean? And then we got here and it was like, why is the growth so slow? But the number of shows, my input on a daily basis is like quadrupled,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? And that just is the absolute recipe for burnout. And not to mention at that point, you know, we can talk about all the label bullshit, but I know we're at an hour. Um, but you know, at that point, we're so many shows, and you play a show, we're guaranteed $150. We have to sell our shirts for $60 to match shirt price of the headliner. No one's going to buy that shirt from us. You know what I mean? The next location is 8 hours away, and load in is 10 a.m. And so you got to drive through the night. You made $150. See y'all there, right? It just, you become so burnt out, and it's such an unsustainable business model that like without, at that point in my life, without heavy use of drugs and alcohol, I wouldn't have lasted as long as I did. But it sustained all of us, and we were the party band, you know. And so there's a lot of that time that's very also very blurry for me, and I have a lot of like guilt and shame and regret about a lot of things. But probably one of the biggest ones you mentioned earlier is we've met so many amazing human beings along the way, and I was so focused on the goal that I didn't allow myself, give myself permission to water those seeds and feed those relationships, you know. So that's why I'd go 6 years from seeing you or anyone
Yeah.
else, you
Yeah.
know. But I approach a lot of that now with gratitude instead of anger and resentment and sadness. And so that's where I'm currently at. There's a lot of in between, there's all the label stuff and what happened after and all that other kind of stuff. But uh, I don't know that we have time for that tonight.
Yeah. Well, listen, I number one, I've loved talking to you, and what you just said was ringing every bell in my head when I think about that time and being so obsessed with the next thing and
Hmm.
never thinking about a day in Albuquerque when we're in Taco Bell or something and like
Hmm.
how awesome is today.
No,
You
dude. I mean,
know,
the worst part is like I remember going to the studio with you guys and singing on that track, barely,
yeah.
right?
Oh yes.
But I remember it. Uh, Between that time and everything I had done to my brain and body over however many years, and then the last time we played together at the varsity and you guys asked me to come up, I was like, I don't have any recollection of anything at this point. I don't know what to do. I'm ashamed, honestly. And I was sober that night. I was very early into sobriety that night.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't yet like fully been able to process how I got to that point, but also like giving myself permission to be like, hey, it's okay that uh, that's how things went. Make it right however you can. So I would love to pitch to you that we do a follow up call and do another recording if that's in any way, shape, or form a way that I can make that up to you because I love you and I would like to invest any time I can give you into this with you.
Yeah. And listen, man, I don't, it's funny. I don't, I'm I'm so grateful that you are talking to me now. And I am genuinely so grateful for the time that we had. And I feel honestly like not one zero drip of, I just don't look back with any negativity on any of it. Again, I tell you straight up, like you guys were incredible. You were a phenomenal band. I was so proud of what you accomplished. Um, and then inspired, right? Too. I was really inspired by what you did. And sitting with you here now, one thing's hit me that has always escaped me until this moment. And let's try this on.
Okay.
I always thought that your vocals and your melodic construction drove the bus, right? But sitting with you now, I realize that it's actually how forward your emotionality is that drives the bus.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
No, it does. That's the part that honestly I was afraid we would get to. And I would like to pick that back up if possible.
Yeah.
Because
Part two.
that's I'm tearing up now just thinking about it. But I never I never loved music like other people say they love music. It was a necessity for me. If I didn't get on stage and say those words and scream them and throw myself around and sweat myself to death and almost drink myself to death over it, why was I there? What's the point? You know? But I do everything like that in my life. And that's been a blessing and a curse, you know? But I my wife asked me, why don't you sing around the house? Like I don't like singing, you know? It makes me feel things
Yeah. Yeah.
that I'm not comfortable feeling unless I'm surrounded by strangers, drunk as fuck, and I have at least three dudes that I know will fight somebody if they try to say something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I love you and
Love you too,
uh,
buddy.
you're such a fantastic fucking performer. I remember watching you at Rabs and being like, this dude is singing about Michael Jackson, but like this is exactly what Michael Jackson would be doing, you know? Like this is the rock and roll version of Michael Jackson. There was so much Freddie Mercury, dude, and like I'm Freddie Mercury's my number one of all time.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. You could say the same thing about Freddie Mercury. As fucking phenomenal of a singer as that dude is, and how still ahead of the time he was and still is. That dude, it was the emotion, not just the talent. I think that there's, like I said, so many talented people, so many good musicians who can shred a solo, who know theory and things like that. And then there's artists who create something because something inside of them is saying, if you don't, you're going to die for some reason or something like that.
Yes.
And they can be synonymous. They can both, you can have a good artist who's a good musician and a musician who's an artist. You know, there's a lot of gray area, I guess, but for me, I couldn't let there be gray area. It was one or the other.
Yeah.
When I give myself gray area, it's like I'm giving myself permission to half-ass something,
Hmm.
you know. And I have two speeds. It's a billion miles an hour, absolute slug, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I'd love to jump in on that.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Uh,
So,
yeah,
um, yeah, listen, after this talk again, I honestly learned something about you today. And so I'm so grateful for that. And we'll post this up and we'll come back and get another date to run it back. The
cool.
last thing is when I got a guitar, I learned exactly one chord and I wrote exactly one song. And I only learned another chord so I could write another song. And I feel like you're either one of these two people in this world, right? It's like, get the guitar, let's go learn everything. Or when you said that, I was like, that's it,
Yeah,
man. That's
yeah.
it. I
I
just
don't
want to
give a
write a
fuck
song.
about how good anybody is. I mean, dude,
Yeah.
it's why like Ziggy Stardust is what it is. When Brian Eno had the drummer play the guitar solos, because if the guitarist played, it would just be good guitar solos.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about, man. So
And
I avoided theory and everything like the plague, and I had to be a dickhead to people who were like, "Oh, that doesn't make sense." I'm like, "Well, the stage is elevated because I'm better than you or something." I don't know, dude. You know what I
yeah.
mean? I would just
Yeah.
say these things just because that was all I had.
No way.
Like
No way. So you are a special person because of how creative, how emotionally forward, but then how driven. And so it's who you are, man. It is who you are. And I'm so proud of you. And we're
thanks,
going to run
buddy.
this back, dude. So great to talk to you. And I can't wait for the next round.
I'm so grateful to hear your voice and to still be able to do this, man.
Absolutely. All right, my brother.
Love
Take
you.
care. Love you too, man.